welcome to the Spelts Family Business Podcast. I always mess that up. I always try to say just the Family Business Podcast.
It rolls off the tongue easier.
It does. It's a little easier to say. It's all right, though. But yeah, welcome back. Glad to have you guys. We kind of have an interesting topic. We're going to talk a little bit about opportunities today and kind of recognizing them. I feel like there's opportunities all around us all the time, and sometimes opportunities can come up and it seems like it's a good thing, and then you can jump at it and it's not a good thing, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll kind of talk about that. Some things have kind of...
Well, it's interesting because I think they also come in front of you and there's things that are really flashy and they're like, oh, I should do that.
Right.
We used to have a saying when our salespeople were, sometimes they'd look at other opportunities, and which was okay. We don't have a problem with that. And some of them took those opportunities, but we always said you'll do best when you do what my old boss Shane used to say, which is hocus focus, not hocus pocus, right, with magic, but hocus focus. Because when you focus on one thing, you can develop the skills you need to become excellent at it.
Yeah.
You can get on little things on YouTube or on Reels or on TikTok where you get in and it's like, oh, real estate investing. If you start watching videos on real estate investing, it will start seeming like the greatest thing since the history of sliced bread, because it'll just keep showing you all these real estate things.
Yeah.
Or affiliate marketing. That's a big one right now. Yeah. And mom keeps seeing that and she's like, I could do that. And I'm like, it's different than what you're thinking. Yeah. Let's focus on what we have in front of us. But sometimes something really good comes up too.
For sure. So. Yeah, you always see those, like, oh, you can start a power washing company and make $1,000 a day, or flipping couches,
right,
and all that stuff.
And if you don't have anything going on, pick one of those and start.
It's awesome. Yeah, for sure. But it's also time consuming. Like, if you already have stuff going on, like, it doesn't really make sense to start trying to flip couches too. But
yeah, and even like right now, we've had some major challenges, which we can talk about. But because of that, we have dialed back on some of the extra things we were doing, right? So we have our website, whattoeatfordinner.com, which is a cool concept. We're still going to work on it, just not right now, because we've got to focus on our core business and getting it healthy because we've had some major challenges. So that's part of opportunity considerations too, is just saying, okay, that's a long-term goal. That's something we can build, but maybe not quite yet.
For sure. And it's hard to, you don't want to spread yourself too thin. You spread yourself too thin and start doing too many things, then it'll take away from what you already have. Yeah. So it's better to get the main body of what you're doing healthy first, and then you can start doing other things. Like RoofMax, we had kind of a rough winter and kind of a slower start than we were expecting to the year. It's picking up now, and so I'm like kind of overwhelmed because people are calling like crazy, and it seemed like people weren't ever going to call at first, but part of that was I saw this opportunity from Casey doing solar batteries, working for ES Solar, and he sold so many RoofMax jobs with these batteries, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. And so I started doing that, but now I'm at the point where I feel like I'm spread too thin. Like, I just feel like stuff's kind of slipping through the cracks. I think it's a good thing because it's been a good opportunity and learned a lot for sure, but it's been interesting. It makes me feel like I need an assistant or something because it's too much sometimes.
So you've stepped in, you've learned the battery and solar business. They kind of hired you just on the side.
Yeah.
But you've now moved up to number 2 in the power rankings, whatever that means. But maybe explain that, how that's all been.
I'm definitely not number 2 in the company. Like, I don't have it's not like I've sold even close to as many as some of the guys that are actually up at the top of the list. Like Casey right now, I think, is number 2. But just self-gens. So self-generating a lead and then closing it is worth a lot as far as their power ranking. So the power ranking is like, they have a ton of company leads that they'll give you. And if you're doing good, like, self-gens are worth a ton of points as far as that goes on your power ranking. And so I've had like 4 self-gens, and so moved me up the list really quick. And so they will give me leads before they give somebody leads at the bottom of the list, just because they know that the leads are going to somebody who can actually close them. But they have so many leads coming in that it's like they'll give, they were giving me overflow before, and it seemed like it was a lot too,
Yeah.
But it's been a good opportunity, and I think it's been cool to be able to sell RoofMax alongside with another product, just kind of broaden our spectrum a little bit. And
it's challenging because I think there's a particular niche in the market right now for batteries and for, with the tax incentives, and so it makes it, ES is capitalizing on that. They're spending a ton on advertising, but they're generating a ton of leads and getting, keeping really busy and keeping you busy.
For sure.
But I think it's probably a challenge for you right now because you have working for ES, which is a job,
yeah,
versus building RoofMax, which is a company you own.
Right.
That's a challenging situation. How are you dealing with that?
Yeah, it's tricky. Usually, like right now, what I've been doing is I just do RoofMax in the mornings. So from the morning to mid-afternoon is what I'll do, and then the battery appointments typically happen later in the afternoon, just because that's when people are home from work, and it's definitely been tricky and stressful, like trying to learn something new. It's also felt kind of weird at times because I'm like, man, am I like cheating on RoofMax? Like, getting another job, but they work so well, hand in hand, and it's pretty cool what ES has done and what they've built, because it's cool too because they're a family business. They started in Layton, Utah, and the CEO of the main battery manufacturer that we use is the company's called Sonnen. It's a German manufacturer, but the CEO came and talked to us on Monday, and it was pretty fascinating, some of the stuff he was talking about. We are the number one battery installers in the world right now. Like, wow. Nobody else is doing it. It's kind of a new, like, we're kind of pioneering this whole side of the industry where it's always just been solar panels on roofs. But it's created some issues as far as like infrastructure and our grid and our power system, because when the power is needed is at night, and that's when your panels aren't producing, and so the batteries become ultra necessary because the grid is just overflowing with excess power throughout the day, and they have no way of storing it.
Because everybody's capturing that solar power and putting it into the grid.
There's 80,000 homes in Utah that have solar, and so during the day production is like through the roof, but demand is only so much, and so they end up paying other states to take the excess power, or they just shoot it right into the ground. They just waste it. And then the reverse of that is the sun goes down, nobody's panels are producing anymore, and they got to kick on the peaking plants again, start burning coal to keep everybody's lights on, and it's an issue for sure. But these batteries, they're interesting. They're pretty fascinating. The Sonnen batteries are cool because they last a long freaking time, and they're an iron phosphate battery, which I had never heard of previously. They're super heavy. That's why they don't use them in electric cars. But they last a lot longer. They're a lot safer. They don't have thermal runaway. I don't know if you remember a couple years ago, like there were the videos of people's phones blowing up on planes and like catching on fire. So that happens with lithium-ion batteries when they expand and contract. Sometimes they can have what's called thermal runaway. Same with if you were to puncture your battery in your phone, like it would catch on fire and like it would turn into essentially a flare, and it's a chemical fire. The only way you can put it out is with like dirt, pretty much. Like I don't know if you've ever seen those videos of Teslas catching on fire. It's pretty rare. They've only had a couple. It's only happened a couple times.
I think I've heard of it. I don't think I've seen the video.
Yeah, instead of they can't put it out with water, so they have to bury the car in like thousands of pounds of soil just to get the fire to go out, or else it'll burn for 3 days straight. Wow. Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, these batteries, it's really cool technology. It's really fascinating what ES has done. Like they have over 4,000 battery installs now, and they're doing like 100 a week. Like we had like a record day the other day where it's like 36 batteries or 36 points. They do like a point system. But it's pretty fascinating, and I like the opportunity for sure. Like it's a good opportunity to help build RoofMax and as well as help me make a little bit of money too,
What do you think how many batteries have you sold so far?
6.
6 batteries, doing it for a month.
Yeah.
What are the top people selling every month?
A lot.
Yeah.
Probably more than that. I would say like probably 10 to 20. 20 would be a big month, but 10, 15, those guys are doing a lot. And then they're also, a lot of them are selling full systems too, or they'll sell solar panels too, which I haven't quite dialed that in yet. It's a hard sales process. It's a long sales process.
Just take some patience because you got to build out an engineering plan and then present it back to them, and it's not just a one and done type deal.
No, and
haven't you had some that were on the verge of those?
Yeah, I've had a couple that were close.
Just haven't closed them.
Yeah, I think it's just my closing hasn't been dialed in enough. Trying to close a deal. It's also expensive too. It's like the most money I've ever had to ask for in a sitting.
Yeah.
It's can be intimidating when you're asking for $100,000.
Right.
For 40 solar panels and a backup battery,
and a new roof.
And a new roof, and yeah, it can get expensive.
Because when they're getting full systems, it's best for them to get a new roof at the same time.
For sure. And that's one of the things that I really like about this is we have, like with RoofMax, we've always had people that didn't quite qualify. And at that point, it's so hard to leave and not have an option for them or not have some way to help them. And the batteries and like with all the tax credits and rebates and stuff, it's pretty crazy. Like usually, like I had one just the other day. Ended up selling them a battery and a new roof. But their roof was $18,000, and the tax credits and incentives added up to like $17,500. So they got a roof for $500 when they bought a battery.
Yeah.
Just like crazy numbers, because the tax credits go off the total project cost, and we just throw the roof in with it.
Are those credits, do they have to be used that next year, or
no,
they can carry over?
Yeah, they can use it up to 5 years, I believe. So.
Well, this isn't necessarily a discussion about solar, but
yeah, right.
Tell me about talk to me about the opportunity, weighing out the opportunity, because obviously, it is, there was an opportunity for it to help RoofMax, but you've gotten so busy with it, it's challenging to keep up on RoofMax, I'm sure, and do everything. So how did you evaluate and make the decision to do that?
I think we were, just kind of struggling this winter. We made some bad marketing decisions at the end of last year, spent a bunch of money, and didn't directly translate into more business. It just kind of was a money hole, essentially, and it was frustrating. And then we were going through winter. I was trying to figure out how to do heat cable, realized it was just going to be a pain in the butt, and then it didn't snow very much, and so that kind of died. And so I was just kind of sitting on my thumbs, like trying to figure out what to do to keep RoofMax alive, and keep it going, because we do great in the summer. Like we kick butt in the summer, but it's hard in a winter market where you got to shut down.
We're out of business for 4 months at least.
4 or 5 months, and so I was just like sitting around like.
It snowed enough that we couldn't do any spraying.
Yeah.
It was. Roofs were covered.
For sure. And people don't really think about their roof in the winter. They're just like, we'll figure it out in the spring, or we'll figure it out in the summer. So it's kind of a weird time for us, And I saw Casey, he's another RoofMax dealer. We've talked about him a handful of times, but he got in with ES Solar, had a friend there, and started selling these batteries and selling RoofMax with it. And he found that he could pre-sell RoofMax jobs in the winter by, piggybacking on these batteries, and it only ends up adding like $10 or $15 a month to their financing. And so I saw that, and I was like, man, how do I start selling these batteries? Like, need to figure it out, And so we talked to a bunch of different companies, and tried to figure it out on our own. And then eventually I was just like, Casey, like, get me on with ES, dude. Like, I got to do something. And so he took me in. We started talking with ES, and I was kind of torn. Like, it was kind of hard for me to say, okay, I can do this too, for whatever reason. And I don't know if that was just me being naive or what, but I just felt like I was like, I just don't want to lose anything that I've worked so hard for, you know?
Yeah. And that you have ownership in. And
right. And didn't want to, like, the nice thing about it is it's not like I really work for I work for ES, you know, but it's on my own
You're
pace,
an independent contractor, so you
Yeah.
have flexibility. And
For sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I was kind of torn for a second, but then I started, like once I got trained and everything, I realized, like, wow, this is actually a really cool company. They take really good care of not only their sales reps, but all their employees. They're a full service company, and I was just like, you know what, I think this is a good thing. I need to look at it as a good thing, and more like an opportunity that I can take advantage of, and simultaneously help bolster up RoofMax too, you know. And it's been pretty cool. It's been awesome. I'm still very new to it, still trying to figure it out, you know. But it's been good so far. So
that's cool. I think opportunity is interesting. Because they come in front of you, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to evaluate them, and sometimes, like in the situation you were in, you feel really torn. You're like, I don't know, this seems really good. I don't, you know,
Yeah.
It's hard to make a decision there. It's been that way for our company recently too. We've had to take on new things. We've had to close old things. I'm a member of Max Place down in Salt Lake, which is just a club for business people to be part of things, and they do cool entertainment pieces. But it's also just a great meeting place, and you can get a massage there. You can get your hair cut or get a shave. I don't really get many haircuts these days, but. But anyway, it's a cool place. So I've used it to take clients and whatnot. And the owner is a friend of mine. I think I've mentioned it on past podcasts, but he said, I was there yesterday, and they were just getting ready to close, and I was visiting with Brady, the owner, and he's like, hey, I want to introduce you to Dan Clark. And I was like, okay, great. And he's like, I know you've talked about getting into speaking more and doing some of those things. And I said, yeah, that'd be awesome. And he's like, yeah, Dan Clark, have you heard the book Chicken Soup for the Soul? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, it's that Dan Clark. So Dan Clark and Jack Canfield wrote that book together, and that's who I'm meeting tomorrow. And he's like, well, let me call him real quick. So he calls him, and he's like, oh, I'm actually in Utah. And he's like, really? And he's like, I have a friend I want you to meet. And he's like, that'd be great. I'll come down to Max Place. He's a member of Max Place too. And he's like, I'll come down. And he's like, when would be good? And we were just trying to figure out a time. And it's tomorrow, Saturday, at 4:30 was the time that he could do it. And my Saturdays are kind of sacred.
Yeah.
And not only that, but Cameron's bridal shower is tomorrow. Not that I'm going to that, but it just makes the day busy, right? We'll be setting it up. We'll be getting prepared for all the stuff, and then taking it down, and we'll have people in town and family and whatnot. And but I was like, that's one of those opportunities that I have to evaluate and say, all right, I think it's worth taking the opportunity to do that, even though it's inconvenient, even though it's challenging to make that happen, along with everything else that we have going on with Gray having football game. And it's just it's a mess. Tomorrow's going to be a mess, but it felt like one of those opportunities where I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that opportunity.
Yeah.
Despite the challenge, I'm going to go for it. And then other times you have to evaluate, and you also have to say no, because if you're spread too thin, it's not good.
Start losing things through the cracks. It's been crazy working double time recently. Like, I'm just like ragged all the time. Just absolutely beat. So tired. I get home at like 9 pretty much every night. It's like working all day long every day until it's dark. And but it's been good. Like, I've enjoyed it. I think the opposite side of that is opportunities that don't work out,
Yeah.
Like, I had the opportunity to go out and do summer sales, and I did really good, but I was I wouldn't say necessarily taken advantage of, but wasn't paid what I think I was owed, I went out and essentially worked my butt off for 6 months straight in the Florida heat for like $750 every 2 weeks. That's what I ended up getting paid.
Yeah.
And that was what I was getting paid while I was out there. And I was thinking, oh, I'm going to make so much money. Like, when my paychecks come through at the end of the year, I'm going to be making, tons and tons of money. And that just wasn't the case. I went out and sold like $250,000 worth of pest control. And I made like 11 grand, I think. That's how much I got paid.
And those summer sales companies are notorious for this runaround. They promise the world, and then you go kick butt, really. I mean, you weren't exactly the top performer or anything, but you did good.
I did really good. I sold 220 accounts my first year, and I was like the number 3 rookie rep in the company. And just, I was doing the math on my own. I was like, man, I'm going to make like 80 grand from working for 6 months. Like, this is going to be awesome. And then they came back to me with all these deductions and taking things out. And it was, just ended up not being the best thing financially for me, but the opportunity to go out and learn how to sell, like in hindsight, obviously not in the moment, I didn't feel very good about it, but now looking at it, I'm like, man, that set me up to be able to run RoofMax and learn how to sell stuff, and like now I'm doing solar battery sales, and it all translated really well and opened up more doors for me in the future. And so, but I know you've had kind of some opportunities like that seemed like they were going to be amazing, and then you get into them and they're not exactly what was promised, and happens.
I'm really good at hearing. I'm so optimistic naturally. I'm really good at hearing what I want to hear about an opportunity and not hearing what I don't want to hear. Mm-hmm. So I've gotten myself into situations where I paid for it because I just didn't hear.
Yeah.
I mean, even like summer sales, the only reason I knew that that's how they were, I kind of warned you about that at the beginning, was I've seen it. I've seen it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Once you take out rent and you take out all the other fees that they put in place, like, it's not nearly what it sounds like. And that's okay. It is what it is. I wish they were a little more upfront about how they sold it, but there are people who do really well with summer sales. That,
for sure.
I mean, there's quite a few people I've met and I know who make a solid 6-figure income working 4 to 6 months a year.
Yeah.
They just go knock doors, and it's so. Anyway, I think that's the challenge is there are some really good opportunities in that. It's just a matter of finding the right one and then knowing in advance what your expenses are. We had people when I was at Living Scriptures who would do summer sales, and I wasn't really in that department, but I knew it was close enough and in leadership that I knew what was going on. But they were people who just lived like paupers. Like they knew they were going to live, like even some in a tent sometimes. They would live in a tent at a KOA campground to keep their expenses low because they knew if they sacrificed for the summer and just sold as much as they could, then they would take home much better, income and not have nearly the fees or any of those things.
For sure. Yeah. I think it's interesting, like when we initially talked about this topic, I remember when I was like 18 or 19, I can't remember exactly what happened, but at the time I was working in HVAC and didn't love it. Like, it just wasn't my thing. It was good, hard work. I made decent money doing it. I made like 40, 50 grand a year for an 18-year-old kid. That's pretty good. But I was just sick of it, and I knew I didn't want to do it for the rest of my life. But I remember you telling me a story about Grandpa Spelts. I can't exactly remember the story, but I think he had multiple opportunities that he told you about. One of them being buying a piece of land that he had the money for, and didn't they build like a Sears on it or something, like something crazy?
It was down on Las Vegas Boulevard, down towards the south end. I don't know exactly where, but I went with them to look at it, and it was a dry, dead patch of desert.
Yeah.
There was really nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember, somebody was looking at it, and they were friends with my dad, and they were like, you should come go in on this with us, something like that. I don't know all the details. My dad could fill it in. But I just remember he was just like, why would anybody ever want this piece of crap land, just barren desert at the end of the world. Like there was just nothing there. And if you go there now, it's all populated. It's all filled in. I don't know exactly where it was, somewhere at the south end of the Las Vegas Strip, Las Vegas Boulevard. That whole thing is all built in. There's just so much happening there. So anyway, I think that's the hard part, is knowing. I also had the opportunity to buy Bitcoin when it was about just under $1,000.
Oh yeah.
And I went to a meeting and I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I mean, that was late for
right.
Bitcoin.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there were people who could buy it at pennies, for
right.
15 cents or whatever. But I just remember going in and being like, I just don't get it.
yeah.
I don't get it. I have Bitcoin now, but back then I was just like, what do you mean digital currency? Like it was an opportunity and I passed on it, even though a friend told me about it. He's like, I'm getting in, and he got some. I didn't. And I'm like, that's a way to, it was recently at $70,000. That would have been a way to 70 times your money,
right. Yeah.
So.
Back to kind of what I was saying, just the whole grandpa's story, like that opportunity to buy the land that could have been worth millions and millions of dollars, especially if they're building on the Strip. Like there's some big companies that would have been interested in that land. But I just remember sitting in the van, driving to a job. I think we were driving down to Salt Lake or something, ready to work a 12-hour day, and, it was hard work. And I was just like, man, like, I remember you saying opportunities will present themselves. Like, it will happen. You just have to be looking for them. And I was like, man, if I see an opportunity to do something, I'm going to do it. Like, I have to do it. And that was kind of what happened with summer sales. Is I was like, oh, this is an opportunity. I'm going to go get rich. Didn't end up happening. But I'm glad I took the jump, which was trade in my, not 9 to 5. It was like 7 to 7. It was long, hard days. Yeah. But taking that, regular 5-day-a-week job and trading it for something that might not pay me money, that might not, commission-only sales is kind of a jump. But I was ready to take the leap because I was like, I want something more for my life than, working all day, every day, just slaving away to live paycheck by paycheck,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I just always thought that was interesting. Like, opportunities will present themselves, especially if you're looking. Like, something will come up. But then I learned soon after that you got to be careful with the opportunities you take, because things can come in to your life that seem like the most amazing thing ever. Like, you remember when I did Forex, when I did like the foreign exchange trading thing, and it was a pyramid scheme, and I was like, no, this seems really good. Like, it's only $250 a start, and then there are all these monthly fees. Ended up like throwing away $1,500, which is not that much, but for me at the time, it was a lot. It was a lot for me, and
I wouldn't step over it.
Right, for sure. And I just ended up, learning that opportunities present themselves all the time, but you got to be careful. You got to really think about what you're going to do. And I remember when RoofMax came up, I was still selling. I was out in Florida, knocking door to door, and you called me like one afternoon and told me about it, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. So, and eventually we just started talking to the sales team, and it seemed like a good opportunity. And when it came down to it, I was thinking about it, and I wanted to sleep on it, and I've always been somebody that follows my gut feelings. Like, I don't always have them about certain situations, but if I really, really think about something, like an opportunity, I'll have a gut feeling, and I will know. Even if I make the wrong decision, like in hindsight, I'll be like, oh man, I totally knew beforehand that I shouldn't have joined this Forex pyramid scheme, but I did it anyways because it seemed I had dollar signs in my eyes, and it seemed like I was going to become a millionaire by trading Forex, Thought I was going to be a day trader.
And I'm sure there's people who have done that.
And there are, but it's just rare, and I got into it with high hopes and quickly realized that I wasn't one of those guys,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I think it's really important to seriously weigh your options, but also not to let opportunities pass you by,
I think that openness is challenging. There's a guy on TikTok or Instagram Reels, something that I see him quite often because I like the videos. But one day he had a silver bar, pure silver, heavy. I think I looked it up. I think it was worth like $1,800. And he had a stack of
Hershey's,
the large Hershey bars. And he walks up to people and he's like, "Would you rather have a silver bar or a Hershey's bar?" Everybody picks the Hershey's bar.
Everybody takes the Hershey's bar.
I'm like, what's wrong with people?
I know.
He just did it with a Canadian maple leaf. They're worth like $2,500 to $3,000. The solid gold coin, Canadian maple leaf. And he's like, "Would you trade that water bottle for this Canadian maple leaf gold coin?" And, girl's like, "Oh, I drink out of this all the time. I wouldn't want to do that." He's like, "Okay." He goes to the next guy and he's like, "That's a nice watch. What is that?" And he's like, "It's a Tissot." And he's like, "What's that worth?" Because they have some expensive watches. And he's like, "Oh, it's a cheap one. It's only like $500. A cheap one for $500. But he's like, "It's a cheap one. It's like $500. He's like, "Well, would you trade that watch for this gold Canadian maple leaf?" And the guy's like, "No." And like constant things like that. Yeah. Sometimes like silly little things like, "Hey, would you trade that?" Like the water bottle, and nobody would take him up on it. And the crazy thing is, at one point he turns and he's like, they're like, "Well, I don't know what that's worth." And he's like, "Yeah, we're standing in front of a coin shop. We could easily walk in there and have them do an evaluation on the coin and tell you what it's worth, tell you the weight, all this stuff." And nobody was taking him up on it. I'm like, man, how closed are we sometimes to opportunity?
That's right in front of you.
Right in front of you.
Yeah.
Like even at the low end, $2,500 for one of those coins. Like
you could buy 50 of those water bottles.
At least, yeah. So it's just a crazy thing that people, value the wrong things. And there's also a comfort zone that we all get in. All those people were comfortable with what they had. They knew what it meant to them. They knew what it was worth to them.
Yeah.
But trading it for something that's a bit unknown. And obviously those are people that, if you talk to someone who was a person who invested in gold and kind of understood things, they'd be a little bit different, right? But
for sure,
the average person, they're just in their comfort zone of, no, I like my water bottle.
Yeah.
I'll rather take that Hershey's bar because I know what that is.
Right.
I know it'll bring enjoyment and it's safe, right? It's safe taking that. That, I don't know what that is, which that one blows my mind because I'm like, even if it was fake, you go buy a Hershey bar for a couple bucks,
Right.
Take that silver and go, just in case. It's an opportunity, but people walk by opportunities all the time.
Watching those videos is like the most frustrating thing. I'm like, take the freaking silver bar. Like, what are you doing? They take the Hershey's Kiss or the Hershey's bar every time.
I know.
What are you doing?
I almost wonder if eventually someone does take the bar because and they just don't show it.
Yeah, because that's not something that's gonna, bring in more views. Right. It's that outrage a little bit that keeps people watching.
That shock that people are that clueless, but
it's pretty funny.
Well, I think if you approach opportunities and you evaluate them, I think listen into your gut, thinking, okay, is this an opportunity worth considering, worth taking? Is it an opportunity that I should, consider or not consider? You talked about following your gut. I have had a recent experience with that where I really wanted to do something and I just couldn't get comfortable with it. I, in my religious background, I call that listening to the Spirit, that prompting, that still small voice. And I usually ignore it. I'm bad at that because when I want something, I'm like, it's okay. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And I push through that. Your mom, on the other hand, she listens and she trusts. And I'm like, yeah, but I'll hear of opportunity and then I'll see the challenges that other people have had with that opportunity. And I'm like, yeah, but they're not as good as me. I'll figure out a way to do it or be better at it or whatever. And at the end of the day, it just is not it's not a wise thing to do, to push through even though optimism is a positive thing, because I believe people are happier, they can accomplish more when they're optimistic. If you're so optimistic that you are blind to the challenges, that's that's a frustrating place to be in. You're constantly going to deal with pain, and you're going to suffer or cause other people to suffer. We've talked about my real estate career, and I caused pain to other people because I was so optimistic that we could do it, that we were fine, that it was going to be okay. It didn't matter what all the indicators were showing. We were going to find a way, and we had enough buffer in there. Boy, was I wrong, So, opportunities. It'll be interesting to see what happens with you and the solar stuff. I think you've got, I think it's a good opportunity. I told you that the other day. I think it's worth pursuing because it's just a sweet spot in time right now. ES has some special financing that they've been able to arrange that is better than anything else in the industry. They've made relationships and done things right. I love when companies do that, when they have the opportunity and they take it. They see an opportunity in the marketplace, and they, instead of just trying to gimmick their way through it, they really set up the organization properly. They get the right relationships with suppliers and vendors. They go and find solutions to challenging problems, because one of the challenges within the solar industry is the financing is so expensive that a lot of times, it can add $20,000-$30,000 in finance charges to a deal, and that whole piece is just so maddening to customers because they're like, whoa, that's a lot. So if you can find reasonable financing, I think it really gives you a better opportunity.
For sure. Yeah. And I think they're just a really good, the solar industry is crazy right now. Like Sun Power, which is like one of the bigger ones in Utah, just laid off 1,000 employees. Solar companies are going out of business left and right, but because they've kind of, switched gears a little bit, solar's kicking butt. But then on top of that, they're just a good company. They take care of not only their employees, but their customers too. Like they've been around for 15 years, and they have a 4.7 star rating on Google. Yeah. And they've done 7,000 solar installs and over 4,000 battery installs. It's like, you got to be doing something right to have 4.7 stars as a solar company, and haven't been around that long. Like, I don't know, I've just overall been super impressed by the company, and I think it'll be good. It's an opportunity that kind of jumped on, and so far it seems like it's it's going to turn out to be a good one, but we'll see what happens.
Cool.
If anything, I just learn from it and try and hone my skills a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think I'm impressed. I think it's obviously you've been busy, you've been working hard, which is not everybody will do that, Yeah. To take on working morning, noon, and night, and come home late and edit a podcast and.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's been brutal. It's been tiring.
And you're in the process of training someone, so this is part of opportunity when things grow. Some people get to a point and they're like, I don't want employees because it's really hard to take them on. I was just talking to United Way yesterday, and talking about the process of helping someone become competent. And it's challenging because you have someone who's sincere that wants to do a good job, but they're just not performing at the level you want them to perform at. And I say, well, is that the fault of the employee or the employer or the leader? And it's the leader's fault, because when you start with someone, really the way to train someone effectively is you show them how to do it, then you let them go do it. Then you come back and show them how to do it again, and then you go let them do it again. And the reason that's important is because you show them the first time, and they're like, okay, I think I understand. Then they go out and they get their nose bloodied because they didn't understand. Yeah. They don't even know what they don't know. They don't know what they're listening to. Obviously, you should have scripts, and you should have, if they're doing sales, right, it should be scripted out. But then when they watch you again that second time, all of a sudden the things that they didn't know or didn't realize the first time are going to stand out.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, oh, that's way better. I should do that. And so then they go do it again. And once again, they're going to run into issues. And then your future trainings, you can still continue to show them. But obviously the point is to eventually have them on their own, not working, not like I tell employees sometimes, they're like, well, I'll just have you come with me. I'm like, well, I have you so I don't have to go with you all the time, Right. But, and then you can, if they're still struggling, then you go watch them and critique them. If you do that at the beginning, they don't understand why you're doing what you're doing. So show them, let them go on their own, get a bloody nose. show them again, let them go out and get another bloody nose. And then if they're still struggling, you can then, because some people catch on to things like that, others it takes them a while, then you can go watch them and critique them, because now they're looking for feedback specifically to what they're missing. What's the magic pill, right? What's the little piece that I need to do? So as you look at hiring for Roof Max, taking people on, you're training somebody right now to edit the podcast. It's show them, let them go get their nose bloodied. Show them again, let them go get their nose bloodied, and then watch them as they do it and give feedback in the moment or afterwards, if depending on the situation. You know, editing a podcast, you can do it in the moment over a video call and say, oh, well, I use this tool here. Go over here, click this, do that. You can show them very specifically how to accomplish a certain thing. And then as time goes on, it also takes a lot of patience to be a leader, because over time you're going to have to say, okay, well, they've got 90% of what I want them to do, but that 10% is kind of the rare things that pop up that you hadn't prepared them for. And so then when those pop up, your patience is going to be like, oh my gosh, why did you screw that up? Like, you should know that. So you wait for those opportunities to pop up, because they won't understand them until they do. And sometimes you don't even realize that they're going to pop up. You don't even know as a leader, and all of a sudden they do, and you're like, oh, this is how I would have handled that. So then you wait for those to pop up, and then you use those as opportunities to teach again. And you say, everything you did was perfect up until this point, and here's what I would have done differently. To be a great leader, a lot of really top performing salespeople are terrible leaders. And the reason is because they don't know why they're good.
Yeah.
They're so naturally talented, they pick it up so easily themselves that they're like, I don't know, just do it. Like, do what I do.
Right.
And it's like, well, you're special. Like, you're doing something unique, and I'm not the same personality. I don't know how to do it. Like, you trying to be Casey, that's not going to work. No. You got to be you. So, but you can still succeed. You can still find a way. So it's finding that way, but saying, okay, I'm a sales leader, not just a good salesperson, but I'm a sales leader because I know why what I do works. I know what the sweet spots are. I know what I need to say at certain moments to get a certain result. And as you get those things dialed in, write them down, because then you can show someone exactly what they should do when, how they should handle certain objections or concerns, how they should handle, asking for money, how they should handle, any situation that's going to come up. A good salesperson knows why. A good sales leader knows why. A good salesperson often doesn't know why. They're just like, well, this is what I say. This is what I do. And it's just they handle it. It's their confidence. It's all that. It's not necessarily a dialed-in system. So anybody you train, that's how you should handle it. And I'm not saying I do this perfectly, because there's a lot of times where you're so busy, you're just like, go figure it out. And when you get talented people, it's great because they can, but sometimes they need a little guidance.
Yeah.
And it's usually later. I try to blame myself. It's usually later on, and then a weird thing happens, a situation comes up, and then you're like, oh, why did you handle it that way? That's weird. I would have never done that. Here's how I want you to handle it in the future. And it's being patient in those moments and understanding sometimes you're going to have situations arise out of that cause problems, customer service issues. Just be willing to go take care of those customer service issues when they happen. So. Yeah,
I think it'll be interesting, a little learning curve for me.
Yep.
Training somebody how to do something. I've never had employees or,
yeah.
I've had helpers in the past that were just buddies, but
yeah,
that jump from, just being a one-man show to trying to get some help is going to be a learning process for sure.
Start documenting. One of the things we did early on is, as we expanded with Connection, I just went in and I had my people go in and make little simple videos, especially using our software, because we'd bring somebody new in and it would take hours of showing them how to get information from one place to the proofreader, to the designer, back to the, all these steps. And we were growing pretty quickly. And so we were trying to figure out a way to do that. So we just started recording ourselves doing it and putting them into, a Google Drive. And then we categorized them: sales, designers, writers, proofreaders. We just categorize them and show them. And so then a new proofreader would come in, because we were hiring just temporary help at the time. Yeah. A new proofreader would come in. I'd be like, go to this folder, watch all those videos. That's how we do it. so much easier. So just documenting things like that or systemizing, you can just write it down too. Okay, when I get to a house to do a bid, here's the first thing I do. Here's the second thing I do. Here's the third. When I get to a house to do a treatment, here's the first thing I do. Here's the second thing I do. Here's the third thing I do. Just systemizing, documenting, that'll help you be prepared for that. Same thing with editing your podcast. You could do that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've been thinking about building out a system, typing something up just to send to Joanna so she kind of has a step-by-step on what to do and stuff.
Smart.
So I just need to find the time to type it up.
Yeah.
It's been crazy lately.
Yep.
But
it's always when you're the busiest when you need to do that stuff.
Right.
So that's why entrepreneurs sleep less than the average person. Because they've got to take care of that stuff after hours.
Yeah. So cool. Well, I think that was a good podcast. Got some places to run. So
yeah, same.
Cool. Alrighty, well, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you guys enjoy the podcast. If you're listening and you do enjoy what you're seeing or listening to, please leave a like or comment, share the podcast with somebody who may enjoy it as well. It really helps the podcast get out to people that it wouldn't otherwise. So we really appreciate the support and just for tuning in, watching us chat about stuff. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.
See you later.